In this video, I'm creating a mock cover for a book, and the initial concept for the book cover was to have sort of a ghostly image of a woman outside of this girl's little book nook area. And I'm starting off with doing a little bit of a lighter wash background in the exterior scene. And the background, the far off distance, I wanted to make a little bit lighter and less defined. That way it kind of recedes further into the background and allowing the foreground to stand out a bit more once I get to the foreground. So I'm starting out with a bit more of the background and doing a little bit of the blues to create sort of gloomy, rainy day outside, and making the woman outside, the sort of ghost, a bit semi-see-through as well, and have a little bit of a glow to her. As I'm working on objects that are closer in the foreground, closer to the girl inside the building, I'm making that a bit darker so that it appears closer to the viewer. If I was to make the background darker because it was receding further away, that would make it stand out a bit more. So when you're working on scenes like this that are creating depth, you have to be quite careful when you're doing that so that you don't make it confusing as to what thing your eye is meant to be drawn to. Working on these very simple trees, I was looking at Jill Thompson. She's a constant inspiration to my painting style. Her style of doing trees is quite lovely. It's very, she does a very simple sort of a base color, which I've done here, and then she just goes in with a bit of a darker color and creates sort of vague leaf shapes, but not putting too much detail in, just giving you the impression that it is leafy, a nice leafy green tree. And I'm starting on the interior space of the building or the house that the girl's within, and I wanted to have an interesting color contrast between the exterior and interior. So the exterior's blue, and the contrasting color being sort of orange, like golds and oranges, and a little bit of purple to represent the darker areas. And in the picture, it came out less purple and more burgundy, so like a deeper red. Here I'm putting in a bit more blue to create sort of more depth and shadow, because the light focus is going to be on the female character, the girl. And you also, when you're doing something that you're going to put text into, like a cover, for example, you have to keep in mind where your text is going to go in the end. So if you're going to have a title above and the author's title below, you need to create that space. So the central focus is on the girl at the window, but then there's this extra space surrounding her that allows for the words to be put in later, whether you're going to do it yourself or an editor or a graphic designer is going to do that. I'm just putting down some base coats for some of the objects here, and now I'm starting to add a bit of that blue color from the exterior onto the girl character as well, so that we have the color from the exterior coming in and reflecting off of the skin of the character and off of the objects surrounding her. And now I'm putting in a little bit of a highlight below her seat, her sort of book reading seat by the window, just because it was a little too dark down there, and it was just sort of making her look like she was floating and wasn't really grounded by anything. So I did struggle with this piece a bit. I think that going forward I'm going to be working more on color and lighting and how they work together And I wanted to create something that had a lot of contrast to it, the blues and the oranges, but it kind of ended up being a little more muddled than I would have liked it to have been. So this just comes into something that I talk about a lot, which is using references. And I did use some references, but because there wasn't exactly the scene that existed, I sort of had to make it up. And I think if you're gonna do something that is a little bit out of your comfort zone, or maybe you haven't done a lot of, like extreme lighting or interesting lighting, then you should really do your research on photos, finding pictures, maybe even going places that have the right lighting that you're looking for. And when I'm working on more pieces going forward, I'm gonna try and find photographs of scenes that are appealing or particularly interesting that I can use as a reference rather than trying to come up with it on my own. The more you do things like that, the more that you follow reference and you paint scenes that are a little bit out of your comfort zone, you're going to have that knowledge when you have to recreate another scene that has similar lighting. I'm starting to outline her here because I'm panicking a little bit and unsure how this is going to come out and how it's going to look. So I thought I'm going to go ahead and outline her so that I can get a better sense of whether or not this scene is working, if the contrast and lighting is realistic, or just, it doesn't even have to be realistic, it just has to be interesting looking. It can be, you want to be within the realm of reality and not be too crazy looking, but you don't have to be too restrained by, in quotes, what is real and what isn't real when you're working on color and lighting. I'm making it a little bit more, I'm trying to get a little bit more of a purpley color surrounding her, but I end up just making it a lot darker. So this is part of the experiment of working with these colors that I'm not as familiar with. And just adding in little details and more contrast and touching up some of the lighting around her. I really wanted to create this cozy little nook that particularly readers would feel very excited by. They would think it was quite fun or exciting to have this little cozy place for them to read. And then the fantastic element being this woman ghost spirit appears outside her window. I always find rain is really fun to include in pictures. It's quite an easy effect to do. It's just white, and it works the best over darker areas, as you can see here. Some more small details that I'm just adding into the image and just tweaking things. I felt like the window needed to be a bit more defined, so I did add some blue instead of black as a line, just to give the window its sills and ridges, as well as I'm including a bit more of a highlight or a contrast. So I put a little bit more of a sort of cream color in just to create that contrast. And sometimes just to fix little imperfections, if some of the tree bled over into the windowsill, just fixing it up with a bit of white or cream just to get rid of it is a simple enough trick to get rid of imperfections. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!